DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Justin Marshall joins us again. So much rugby to talk. Is that a Blues jersey you're wearing there?
No, it's not, mate. It's just a training shirt. But
Okay. All right.
yeah, it is looking very blue, is it? Maybe I've just come out in support of the Blues after they weren't able to get a home game win in the opening round, which was a bit of a surprise, but it was a belter of a game.
It was, wasn't it? We'll get on to Super Rugby, a little bit about last week, but also a couple of cracking New Zealand derbies this weekend shortly. But the news announced, I think we already knew that we were playing Ireland in Chicago, and then we've got the Grand Slam tour after that. Justin, let's park the two tests against the Springboks. This is probably the next biggest assignment, no disrespect to the Rugby Championship with the Bledisloe Cup, isn't it? Trying to secure a Grand Slam, and it's a hell of a way to start with that repeat of the Chicago 2016 test.
Yeah, absolutely it is. You know, and the fact that that Chicago test has now been confirmed, even though we knew that it was going to happen, but to have Ireland there, and obviously that's been a bit of a happy hunting ground for Ireland in the past, and you know, the first time that they ever beat the All Blacks, so it holds some pretty negative history for the All Blacks as well. But it's a cracking city. Soldier Field is an amazing stadium, and to set the Grand Slam tour off on a huge note, to play in America, in Chicago again, against Ireland, just absolutely fantastic. Great announcement. I'm so pleased that the powers that be have managed to achieve this, because I think it's absolutely fantastic.
Justin, the field is narrower. We got that last time. The Warriors are going to play on a narrower field, obviously, in Vegas, because the NFL field's just aren't. How much of a difference does it actually make?
Oh, look, it certainly has an effect. You know, when you want to use the full width of the field in terms of cross-kick execution, you know, what you're used to in terms of the width of the field, well, that changes. Obviously, it's easier to defend because you don't have as much space that you have to cover. And it makes attack a little bit more difficult because, again, the defence is narrower. So you've just got to think about that. But ultimately, if you do the right things, you'll find overlaps. You'll find the space on the outside, on the edges anyway. So, yeah, you've just got to make sure you're nice and smart. I think it basically, when I sort of try and ball down a narrower field, it rewards teams that are patient, teams that are prepared to hold on to the ball, knowing that if the field's narrower, you know, the people that are cleaning the rucks don't have to go as far, and halfbacks don't have to run as far because you're narrowing that width. So if you can be patient with the ball in hand and then wear the defence out until you finally find the space, that's that's the key to success on fields that are a bit smaller. I remember playing at the Leicester Tigers field in the UK, and they purposely made their field narrower.
I love hearing
because
stories
they
like
just
this.
wanted to rely on their massive forward pack that they had to win games. So it is advantageous if you know how to use it properly.
So how long does it take practically, you know, for you as a player to get used to that? And do you actually have to train? Or on the training fields, do you just bring it in? How many days does it take before you actually adjust your kicking and things? Because as you've been saying, we see a lot of cross kicks at the moment, and we see the ball being used. You're looking at green space and that. How long would it take?
It doesn't take the players long to adjust and adapt, you know, like they are so now well drilled and well skilled in all areas of the field. Once they sort of get their head around exactly what they're operating with, it doesn't change the shape of the way that you want to attack or equally the way you want to defend. To a degree, it makes it slightly easier for both. But it just means that you just, like I said, you have to a degree, just think a little bit more about making sure that you are holding onto the ball and being smarter about the areas that you play in, but equally knowing that the opposition are also going to be figuring out smart ways to play on a narrow field. But in terms of adjusting and training, yeah, they'll narrow their training fields and adjust to the width of what the field's going to be like at Soldier Field. And both teams, look, we got a spectacular game last time they were there, Marty, didn't we? I think Ireland scored 6 tries or something 5 tries or something ridiculous like that against the All Blacks. And yeah, it didn't seem to affect the spectacle by any means. So
I think there was Joe. That kind of catapulted Joe Schmidt, didn't it? There was like, oh, hello, this guy's. And since then, here's a great stat: we've played 10 times, we split it 5 each. So it's a hell of a rivalry, which was born of that day.
It was born of that day, and you know, obviously, it stung the All Blacks, and you know, losing for the first time in our history. You know, it's never nice because that's a piece of history you can never get back. And Ireland were very well aware of that, and the All Blacks, obviously, they felt that pain of being that team that had the enigma of finally breaking a record that the All Blacks had held for over 100 years, and that hurt them. And I think that was what motivated them as well, because when they went back to Dublin, they actually won the Test match over there. So, yeah, since then, though, there's been a real rivalry. Both teams, with Ireland coming out here, beating us here twice and on our own soil. You know, it's just created this tension between them. And I don't think that's dissipated after Rugby World Cup, where the Johnny Sexton, Rieko Ioane stuff all surfaced, and also Peter O'Mahony and what he said to Sam Cane. It's just fueled what is a great contest now, and good for it. You know, we all get a spectacle out of it, so we should be happy.
So, you know, can we look at in the All Blacks and think, you know, we should win that Grand Slam? I mean, Ireland obviously, but then, you know, we beat England at Twickers last year. Then you got Wales and Scotland, who we should beat. So we've got to target all 4 tests and say, go there thinking we're going to get a Grand Slam.
Absolutely, and this team is capable of winning every test match, I think, this year. It's just about making sure that they do their due diligence in terms of their prep and knowing what strengths the teams that they have up against them present, and don't be dismissive of them. Like, if you're dismissive of England at Twickenham or Allianz Stadium, whatever you want to call it now, then you will find yourself being bitten because you haven't given the opposition the respect. Equally, you know, Wales at this stage haven't been able to win a test match in 14 test matches, but you just never know. Like, they've got everything to gain by absolutely turning around the last 2 years of massive problems by beating the All Blacks for the first time in over 70 years. So they've got a hell of a lot to play for, and Scotland are capable too. So in answer to your question in a long-winded way, which is my style, Marty, as you know, yes, absolutely, we are capable of winning all of those 4 test matches, but equally, so are the opposition capable of beating us if we don't get our prep and go out and play our full percentage game against those sides.
Look, we probably talked to death the first round of Super Rugby, which is a cracking first round. I've got a couple of topics I wanted to bring up, though, before we look at these key matches this weekend. One of them being the rolling maul. And look, it was an effective way that it was used by the Brumbies against the Drua. The Force were good at it as well. I know it's part of the game, but, and this comes up a lot. Is it time that the laws were rewritten? Because it just seems to me to be almost anti-rugby. When you've got a guy that is holding the ball, he's got one hand on the butt of the guy in front of him, and that keeps him bound. Then he's got players that come from behind his hind feet who go ahead of him, and they're not offside. I mean, that's a truck and trailer and any other description of it, which would be offside. It just seems to me to be anti-everything about the laws. And I don't know. I know it's part of the game, but, you know, the way the laws have been rewritten over the last few years is we're trying to create space, use the ball and score tries. And this, to me, is everything other than that.
It is. And look, I feel your pain, and we always have regular conversations around the rolling maul, don't we, within our game, and the legalities of it, how the law is interpreted, and whether or not it's something that we need in our game. But I think the arguments that sway towards having it in the game are quite valid, which is, if you don't have the rolling maul when you're in that sort of 22 area, you know, 15, 10, 5 metres out from the line, and teams know that they don't have to defend that, then all of a sudden they just spread out. And it makes it a hell of a lot harder then to try and score points in that zone. If they have to prepare themselves to stay tight initially for the rolling maul, then you've got a congregation of players in that zone, and it opens up the rest of the field. So, look, I still feel there's a place for it. I agree with you. There are some interpretations that don't make sense. I quite like the fact that they are now calling the 5 seconds, one will go a lot quicker. I would just like to see it go back to one chance. You get your maul set, you have a genuine dig at the line. If the opposition are good enough to stop you before then, there's no second chance. It's basically the referee goes, release it, and the game plays on. And that might just speed it up a little bit, and it won't get so mundane.
Okay. How about going back to the rule we used to have, where in these kind of contact situations where the team going forward retains the ball, which encourages the defence to commit extra players to it, which does open the gaps out wide. You know how that rule used to be? If you got some forward momentum at that ruck time, well, you could turn it over with that. And I don't know why that ever got taken out of the game, but the whole point of it, as you say, is to bring as many players in to spread that. So maybe even bringing that might be a good idea, bringing it back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've just got to continue to debate, what's going to make the game, exactly, more entertaining. And I certainly found in the opening round of Super Rugby, the laws that they've brought in, the fact that you can no longer now basically shadow a player when he's looking to attack a receiving kick. You've got to get out of that zone. So basically, for want of a better word, you can't shepherd anymore. The 30-second rule for lineouts and scrums, You know, we had the ball in play was up by 2.5 minutes on average of what it was in play last year. Yeah, so we had, I think it was just over 38 minutes of ball in play. Last year it was just under 36. So all of a sudden we are now seeing a lot more positivity in terms of the players knowing that the game is fast and the ball is in play a lot more. So we're getting there, Marty. We're getting there. Might not be there with the mauling yet, but we certainly are improving the game.
Well, and also, no TMO interference was just a joy, wasn't it? And all of those games, you know, had something on them right into the last 5 minutes, which was really compelling. The other one I wanted to raise with you was Damien McKenzie, who I just thought was absolutely brilliant, playing two positions in the same game. Now we've got Finn Smith and we've got Marcus Smith who can interchange. We've had Beauden Barrett and Richie Mwanga, both, you know, 10s, and Beauden playing fullback, so he could play both positions. But maybe Damien McKenzie can legitimately play both positions in the same game like we saw him play for the Chiefs, because when he started, you know, taking that pivot role, that first receiver role late in the game, well, it obviously changed the game, didn't it? So I'm actually fascinated to see how that unfolds this year, and especially what Scott Robertson is thinking in terms of him.
Yeah, and you know, where he fits into Scott Robertson's pattern and shape and the way that he wants to play, absolutely. I totally agree with you. His performance at the weekend was outstanding, and that was a classic Damien McKenzie. You know, basically the Chiefs trying to find their way back into a game, being shut out a little bit, and then bang, he just manages to create things out of nothing, skins defenders laterally, which he's so very good at, comes in as a second receiver, and then switches position in the second half. But my rebuttal to that would be the fact that's different when you play against New Zealand and Australian teams, because we defend differently. Okay. So when he's coming in, he's got a hell of a lot more time. When you are switching positions at international rugby, you don't have the time. You are squeezed a lot more. Teams like Ireland and France and even Wales and England, they defend really narrowly and they put massive pressure on you as a first receiver. So Damien McKenzie will look good in Super Rugby. When it comes to international rugby, your time and what you see in front of you defensively is completely different. So when you switch during a game internationally, it's just a hell of a lot harder, Marty. Okay. Whether that's the right thing for him as a player, and he's not constantly getting time in a specific jersey to really grow into that for the year. I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Okay. No, I go with that. Yeah, as you say, Super Rugby is completely different. Great crowds as well. I mean, it's a rainy night at Eden Park, well over 20,000 for that.
Again.
You know,
does it ever stop raining in your city, Marty?
Well,
please.
Just every time the camera's on. Yeah. Every time the bloody camera's on.
Sporting event, you can turn it on like a tap. It literally was a beautiful day, and boom, there it goes. Might as well have some rain.
Crusaders against the Chiefs this Friday night in Hamilton, and you know, I could almost feel the relief from Rob Penny at the end of that Hurricanes game. Again, it was a cracking game of rugby. I was gutted, of course, because being a Wellington lad, but you know, couldn't win the first 5 last year. What's that going to do for the Crusaders in terms of their belief? This is a Chiefs side that we also saw, sub part of the question, really muscle up and almost attack the Blues in the same way the Blues play and go, no, we're going to actually physically front you guys. So this is we saw a great game opening round last year between these two teams at the same venue. So how do you see this one on Friday night? It's just a really brilliant way to kick off round 2.
Oh, it certainly is. Yeah, and both of them were involved in really high quality games last weekend. So they'll be much better for having hitouts like that. They didn't have clunky performances. They didn't have an opposition that was weak and didn't compete. Both of them had to work really hard for their wins and had to find a way to win. And both of them did that from coming from behind on the scoreboard, which goes to show that they've got good quality, good experience. The fact that they were able to bring, I think it was 5 All Blacks or something like 6 All Blacks off the bench to Chiefs shows that they've got depth. Equally, the Crusaders have got really good depth as well. They've got quite a lot of test caps within that side now. Guys like Will Jordan and Sevu Reece were in outstanding form in the first round, showing absolutely no baggage from their November tours and a lot of All Black work. So that's great to see. And you know, like the inclusion of James O'Connor when he came into the game late with his experience. This is going to be a belter of a game. Look, I don't think it's not going to be won by one of those two teams not quite nailing it down because they're lacking experience, because both of them have got heaps of that. They've got it in abundance. Home ground advantage for the Chiefs. And there's a real rivalry there now between the Chiefs and the Crusaders that's developed. Success has bred that. And they've had some really cracking games over the last 5 years in particular, with both of them winning titles as well. So it's well set up. And, you know, I'm sure, again, we're going to see some high-quality performances, some awesome individuals out there as well to compare. You know, if McKenzie starts at fullback, it's McKenzie versus Will Jordan. How good.
Yeah, how good's that? And then, of course, you've got the Blues who are going to be smarting, and especially with Vern Cotter, which I reckon, I mean, there's something psychological about him saying, our boys just might have been coasting a little, which is going to hurt those players, him saying that. And that means that they go down to the Highlanders. And Jamie Joseph, I mean, he doesn't need to say anything to his players. They had that game again in the bag like MP did against the Force. And to lose it at the death like that, I mean, what a way to start for them if they had got that win. So I'm really looking forward to this game as well. On paper, you'd think the Blues would be too strong. I'm hoping a good crowd turns up. It's O week, of course, and, my youngest is down there, and as he tells me, he said, good luck for your exam today, Paddy. I said, yeah, good luck for O week, pal, was my thing. So, yeah. So, look, hopefully another cracking crowd down there as well. But again, I don't think the Blues have got it all their own way. I mean, I'd love to see an upset. I can't see it, but I'd love to see the Highlanders at least front and again play really well in that game.
Oh, absolutely. Again, I think it's a really tough game to call in terms of who's going to win it. Now, the Blues, yes, they're favourites because of their success of last year, but equally they've got a target on their back this year. Every team wants to test themselves against the benchmark team, which was the Blues last year. They're comprehensive winners of the Super Rugby title. So to find out where you are and how you measure up in the season, you test yourselves against the best. And their squad's not changed much, and they've got the majority of players that were there last year, and they look ever as good as what they were last year. So that motivates the opposition. You're right, it is O week, and if people out there don't know, with O week, when you buy your tickets to all the parties and the good fun during the week, it also gives you tickets to the Highlanders game.
Yes, it
so
does.
you get to go to the zoo. So the zoo will be packed. I think the performance last week of the Highlanders was massively encouraging, that they can actually compete this year. And as you said, they should have won the game, so that'll bring people along to the stadium as well. And then, like you say, you've got that factor of Jamie Joseph, who he just looks like he's already added some steel to that team. Their physicality, they'll be tough. They'll know the DNA of the Blues. They want to run at you, and they want to take you on physically. And I can just see him in the changing room before that game saying, "Hey, they're coming at us. They're going to be one-off runners, and we are going to stand up and we are going to take them on one-on-one and let them know that we mean business." Yeah, that's his mentality. And then they've got some, like Tava Norway playing 12, man. Far out.
Yeah.
Like, how good did he look? They've got some pace on the outsides, and I thought the halves played really well too. So, yeah, it's really well set up. You know what? I think I'm smelling a little upset there.
I'd love to see
the Highlanders going to sneak that.
Go on. All right, let's finish with Australia then, who would have been delighted. That's the first time in the opening round they've won all three matches. We get to see the Reds for the first time. They play MP. That's a real tough ask for MP on that Australian tour. And also the news that Michael Cheika's already been interviewed for the Wallabies job. Back to the future. You're kidding me.
I know. Well, they'll be hoping that they don't have what happened to them when they brought a coach back in that's already coached.
That's right.
With Eddie Jones, because that didn't work, did it? And we've just seen that Warren Gatland's had the same problems as well with Wales losing his job after being so successful when he was there originally. So Michael Cheika's been there before. In saying that, he's got much better cattle to work with now after the work of Dave Rennie and Joe Schmidt and bringing some real depth into Australian rugby. So he would be coaching a side that's got better individuals and more depth to work with. But look, he's a competitor. He's coached successfully against the All Blacks and equally in Super Rugby. He's well grounded. He wouldn't be a bad choice, and he is Australian. I don't think they're going to think they will think very seriously about bringing another foreigner in. You remember the crap that was flying around in Australia about, oh no, not another New Zealand coach. We've had Rennie, that didn't really work. Now we've got Joe Schmidt, and they complained about that. But then now they don't want him to leave. So it's like, I think they're probably realising that it's not such a bad thing. But I'm not surprised that Michael Cheika's putting his hat in the ring. He's too much of a competitor. Looking forward to round 2. Thanks as always, mate. We'll talk next week. Absolutely, Marty. Look forward to it. Cheers.
DSPN.